Hello and welcome to the I Love Me Lab show. My name is Gail Buck, and I'm an NLP Master Life Coach, meditation instructor, and a seeker of happiness. And each week, we're going to bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover additional ways of self-care, self-love, and becoming a healthier, happier you. So thanks for spending time with us today, and let's let the show begin. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the I Love Me Lab. And I'm excited again today to have Shelly Young back with us. Now, Shelly was with us on episode 6, and today, I believe, is episode 18. And we're going to be following the conversation we had last week with Gary Mendel, who is with Shatterproof.org organization. And for those of you that didn't see the earlier episode with Shelly, Shelly is a director of programs at the Chris Atwood Foundation, correct? She works, writes, guides, and speaks at the intersection of emotional and physical wellness, family, and the impact of substance, mental health, recovery, and healing. And I'm so excited to have you back. In fact, I have a new friend with Shelly, and so welcome back.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be back. This is one of the fun things that I think I get to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you are since also, you started a beautiful newsletter that I subscribe to, and is called Recover the Mother. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about that and why you decided to do that newsletter?
A little bit about writing is one of the things I feel, well, actually, when we were in the most challenging parts of the journey with my son's substance use, there were these two blogs that I followed. And I so looked forward to any time that they posted, and I would, they were like blankets for me or comfort for me. And just the writing and the reading and they weren't even about substance use, but they were about, they were mothers that were writing, and it just resonated with me. And so I've wanted to do something like that and be someone who shares things that are, not always shared, or isn't always completely focused on the chaotic part of substance use, but on the more comforting ways we can comfort ourselves or take care of ourselves, or know that there's this person out there that gets it. You know what I mean? And
I do. I
yeah,
do know what you mean. Yes. Unfortunately, I know what you
yeah,
mean. Yeah.
yeah. So, I started Recover the Mother, and I think that you, you hear people say we're all recovering from something. Um, and when I look at it from this kind of niche, mothers impacted by children with substance use disorders or mental health disorders, or in recovery, or in active use, wherever they are, we have experienced trauma as mothers.
Yeah.
And so we need recovery. We need our own kind of recovery. And like I've told you in some of our conversations, I want to address the way that systems have failed mothers, and help create conversation or connection or resonance around, removing some of the shame, blame, and guilt that mothers feel for the state of health of their kids, right? When systems should bear a lot more of that responsibility.
Yeah.
So,
And I wanted to also, it was important for me to have you following Gary's because he's such a busy person with this organization that's just exploded because there is such a need in our country and beyond in the world. There really is, right? And one of the things and I wanted to kind of expand on the conversations that he and I started, is the stigma and the shame that's associated with, either having the addiction yourself or your child, your loved one that has the addiction. And can you speak a little bit to what your experience has been, both personally and also as a practitioner in the field?
yeah, personally, um, I feel that stigma is the biggest barrier to people getting well, or people reaching out for help. And I think I'm pretty sure there's research, and Shatterproof, I think, has some of the research that says that the biggest demographic, like their biggest demographic, are women, are mothers, in our age group. And so we're the first people to reach out for help. We're the ones who are Googling and searching and,
Starting to speak up about it instead of not
yeah, and
talking
starting,
about it. Right.
yeah, and talking about it. But we're the first responders, right? So if a first responder is cloaked in some kind of
Mm.
shame, that's a barrier to getting proper care and treatment, or any kind of proper help. Um, it's a barrier to connection, right, with community, and it causes isolation. And we know that isolation can lead to mental health conditions, can lead to accelerated or escalated substance use, and all kinds of physical ailment, right? So I think stigma is probably the biggest barrier, and the biggest contributor to uh, mental health conditions, substance use, and suicide.
Yeah. You mentioned, because I did receive the newsletter where who is the author you were speaking about?
It's Martha Beck. She's a
Yes, there you go.
she's a like well known master coach and author and PhD Harvard social scientist, and I have very much enjoyed the book, The Way of Integrity, except for the way she talks about people who use drugs. And I don't use the word addict ever. I 100% don't use the word junkie,
Oh,
and she
or
uses those.
druggy.
Yeah, she uses those words in there, and there's a a small part of me or a big part of me that would like to write to her and just say, I don't know if you know this. Like, I'm going to give you some grace here because it's clear you don't know.
Yeah.
But we're trying not to do that anymore. We're
Those
trying not
words
to,
are hurtful. They're
yeah, we're
not,
trying not to
yeah,
talk
they
about that
contribute to the
anymore.
stigma. Yeah.
Yeah. Even the White House has put out documentation on that, and SAMHSA, and all of the psychiatrists and social science associations. Like when I spoke at the Collegiate Recovery Conference, the speakers get a package that about, and in it is a portion of it is on language and what not to say, right? And what to
I can
say.
tell you that when I'm in conversation with somebody or I'm listening to something and they'll say something, oh, he's a druggie, they will have had my attention until it's like, ugh. I mean,
Yeah,
you just socked me in the gut. You know how hurtful and horrible and inappropriate the language that you just used. And I think that people just don't.
yeah. And in the book, there is a place where she talks about someone who had a child with it's a short, very short part of the book, but a child with a very chaotic substance use, and the woman really needing to have space between her and her child, right?
Mhm.
Which there are ways to talk about deciding, that it's safer for me to live apart from you than to use the words kick out, right? Like, you don't have to say that. And it
Yeah.
probably wasn't like that. There were probably were discussions, or probably a declaration of, like, for my health and well-being, this is what I need. And so I don't like to, I think that kind of perpetuates stigma, which perpetuates addiction. And um, anything we can do to not perpetuate stigma and not perpetuate addiction would be preferable in our language and our actions. But the book's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's what you said. You said everything was like great except for the language in this particular topic.
Yeah. I mean, and even the language we were talking about, using the word abuse, like substance abuse, which means that it's okay to use substances, but in reality, substances are toxic for the brain. So why any use of it is actually abuse on your body or your
Right,
brain, right?
exactly. Okay, so that's really huge. So that kind of feeds into something else that we touched on briefly in my interview with Gary last week, and we spoke about before we started recording this podcast, was that there are already studies that our government has these studies on the important how important it would be to go into the schools, and it's not about the say no to drugs problem, or it's not about kicking them out for substance abuse or substance usage. It's about teaching them early on and continuously teaching them about taking care of your body and taking care of your mind, and everything in a positive good way, right? So that they're reaching for this optimal health and this optimal brain power, instead of don't use drugs and don't abuse the substance, which to your point means go ahead and use it, just don't abuse it,
Right.
right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Um, Kids are smart. Like, children are little learning sponges, right? We are intelligent beings. And if you give people education and the ability to make choices for themselves on the way they feel in their mind and their body and their spirit, they're going to choose to feel good, right? So, and if you educate people in a way that doesn't make, like, activate that kind of oppositional rebellious thing, like understanding the way that we learn and the way that we process, and the natural things that happen in, say, an emerging adult brain or a teenage adolescent brain, that naturally rebellious, naturally curious, natural, like, you can channel those things, those very important things. There's a really great book about this. But you can channel them into the right pathways for those very natural uh, brain patterns that are unfolding or connections that are being made. So, yes, I think that you start early educating kids about their bodies and their minds, and they're going to make different choices. And you create the ideal conditions for connection and feeling like belonging. Like all the things that we know that substance use makes you feel, right? We create those naturally in the environments that our young people are in. There's all kinds of studies on that. Then we're less likely to use substances. When you feel good in your mind and your body and your spirit,
You
you
don't want
know,
to mess it up with
yeah,
something
you're
else.
like, I want to feel this. Like, when I do that, I don't feel this. There's actually a great study at or a program at University of Vermont where the freshmen live. You can apply to live in this one particular dorm, and they've been studying. It's a substance free dorm, and then they supply the environment with all the things that are good for brain health and spiritual and mental and emotional health and physical health, right? And they track them on an app, and they get rewarded when they do the things that are good. If they use substances, they report it, and then they have a conversation about how they, like, then they rate how they feel after they've used the substances. So they start to make the connections between, when I do this, this is how I feel. When I do this, this is how I feel. When I do more of this, this is how I feel. It's
And so they're getting
phenomenal.
that right. So they're doing that dopamine rush by getting rewarded when they're doing the right things or eating the
Mhm.
right things or doing the right activities.
Yeah, like
That's like
positive
huge power.
reinforcement.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's
the doctor that is in charge of that study said, like, the worst time we could send our kids away to school is at age 18, based on the maturity of their brain. So they're working with that brain, you know, the brain that they have at that time, to teach them how to connect with their bodies and their minds. And they're doing better in school, right? They're doing
yeah.
better. And there's actually a study at VCU right now that they're showing that the kids in the recovery programs are getting better grades than the kids who are not using substances. like the kids that are using substances are not getting good grade, getting this level of grades. Then there's the kids who are not really using substances, or more dedicated to their less to their social life, more to their academic life, I guess. But the kids in the recovery programs are getting better grades than them.
Wow, because they're tuning in and really paying attention to they're shifting the way they think about their minds and their bodies and what's important.
Yeah, and they're participating in certain things that we know make people feel a sense of belonging and a sense of connection and mental health and well-being.
Sense of connection is super important. And I know for mothers, and I know from my own experience and mothers I've met along the way, we can be at risk for isolating ourselves when you have a child in a situation. I think I isolated myself maybe 4 years, maybe more than that, where literally I crawled into this little hole. And I tried to do all the things I was just in so much pain and despair and not knowing what to do. Right. And that's
Yeah.
not what you want to do. You don't want to isolate. And of course, the person with the, suffering from the addiction as well is isolating themselves too in their different ways. Um,
They're isolating in certain ways, but mostly they're getting a lot of connection from their drug using community, right? Like that's still a community. You know what I mean? There's still
yeah.
connection there, and there's ritual, um, and so it feels like the kind of it's not as isolating until it probably gets escalated, and then you introduce the mental health part, and now we're really kind of like don't want to be a part of anything. But for me, and yeah, I started to break off my friendships and not want to do things with other people because I didn't want, I was embarrassed because I thought people would judge me as a mother. I thought my motherhood was really under scrutiny. And I'm not without proof that that was not happening. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm sure it
Um,
was. I'm sure
yeah.
there's lots of judgment associated with that. There's judgment from, oftentimes for the medical professions and
Yeah.
from, your friends and family. I mean, there's lots of judgment on that. And there's also
Law
that
enforcement, law enforcement.
law. Yeah.
Like,
Although I have to tell you, my son has been very fortunate with law enforcement. I mean, he has all kinds of wonderful police officer stories along the way where he
oh,
was,
I think law enforcement
oh,
can be very helpful, but
yeah,
I'm saying
he lucked out. I
in
mean,
my experience, law enforcement was a source of shame for me. You know what I mean? When they would say things like, "What? Like this is your kid. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm trying. You
yeah.
don't understand." You know?
Yeah, and so that's what I was gonna ask you. So for me at least, so there's the stigma and the shame, but there's also that not knowing what to do when you try something over and over again or different things and nothing is working and feeling like hopeless. And then you have people talking at you on each side that may or may not be, usually not, in this space, but they're giving their advice, which maybe you tried, maybe you have, but it feels like you get whiplash and you don't know what to do, and
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 worse kind
pick
of
him up,
whiplash.
don't pick him up, help him, don't help him. You're hurting him by helping him. You're hurting him by not helping him. I mean, all of this, I'm just going to call it torture because it is, because you just feel so desperate and at a loss, right?
Yeah, yeah. I remember sitting on a sofa in a treatment program and listening to the lady talk to my son, and I was like, what is this? Like, why this it's not making sense to me at all, you know? And we were caught in this like kind of whiplash type thing.
Mhm.
We're stuck. Like if we do this, they're going to say we're doing it wrong. If we do this, we're going to get in trouble. And I was just like, this is really hard and confusing. So I think what happened for me was one, I stopped listening to anybody that wasn't like, as Brene Brown says, like in the arena, right?
Mhm.
So if you weren't experiencing what I was experiencing, did not need to hear from you about what you thought should happen, right? Uh, and which in some ways causes some disconnection because then those were my friends, right? That were telling me things. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means when you say that. And I don't even know where you learned that. And is that
Right. And how
where
would
are
you
you getting
know?
this? Right,
Right.
you know. Um, and then, you know, I I started to I listened to professionals, but then I started to have to discern whether I thought the professional was valid,
Right.
you know? Because underneath a lot of those things is cultural conditioning and societal norms and morality, and stigma, you know?
Yeah.
And I had to look at my own, I really had to look at my own stigma because, I grew up in an environment of alcoholism. And so I was very mad at people who use substances. Even though I was drinking myself, I still was like mad about it. um, what I'm trying
Mhm.
to get to is I started to listen to myself, right? I got to a place where I was like, yes, that resonates. No, that doesn't.
Mhm.
That's going against my true mother nature. I'm not going to do that. My instincts say to stay connected. I'm not going to do that other thing that somebody's telling me to do. So I started reading everything in the whole wide world I could read.
And I just want to say for anybody listening, and sometimes your instinct might say to disconnect, and that's okay. I think allowing yourself grace and
Yeah.
trusting yourself to know what the best thing is for you and your circumstance, is huge, right?
Yeah, and when I say to stay connected, I mean that by heart, right? I don't
Yeah.
mean that by like not put time and space in between you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I could put time and space in between us. I had to. That's why I left and went on those retreats, even when he was in chaotic use. Um, I There were times where I had to have the time and the space to connect with myself so that I
Yes.
can make decisions for myself and
So you don't lose your mind,
I
really.
didn't lose my mind. I mean, same thing when he was a colicky baby. I had to like hand him over and like take some time and space. So when I say that, I don't mean like if you aren't in like regular relationship and regular, but I mean consistently connecting verbally or by text or whatever. I'm not saying that that's not something that you can't also choose, right? For your health and well being, there were times that I chose that too. Um, but my heart, I was never gonna like write my kid off or um, disown or ever think that, I wasn't gonna love him. I was always gonna love him, you know, I was always gonna love him. And, um, I was gonna fight for his life, right? However that looked. I did, I'll be completely honest. I did tell him, if you damage your brain in doing this by your choice, like by the actions that you're taking, um, I'm not going to take care of you. I'm going to institutionalize you. And I said, I won't be able to do it and take care of these other kids. So I just need you to know ahead of time that I'm not going to be able to take that on. And that's a hard thing to say. That was a hard thing to
Oh, well,
say.
yes, it is. 'Cause I've been in that space, and even is for any listener, I'll let you know that, Shelly and I were talking before, and we both had to fix our mascara a little
Yeah.
bit because even
I'm
after
starting to
years
do
of
that
this,
now.
it's
Yeah.
still yes, it's still, it's always challenging because you love your children and you have empathy and compassion for other people in the same situation because you know what it feels like, but, for my son, I can't even institutionalize him. I
Yeah.
mean, that's how the system is so broken, and he'll be institutionalized for very short periods, but he can be very articulate, and people have with the way the system is now, they have legal rights, and so he'll
Yeah.
appear before a judge and be very articulate and be released, and then he's homeless again in Los
Yeah.
Angeles. And
Yeah.
so when you're living with your child, knowing that your child is not is delusional and not seeing things as they really are, and living on the streets and perhaps using hospitals as a hotel room,
Yeah.
um, it is a journey that I never in a million years would have even dreamed that that was possible. Especially not for me. That's it. Just it still blows my way. And here we're 10 years later, and it just
Yeah.
it's yeah.
And
Again, it's like what can you do?
yeah, and I meant like if he was so severely incapacitated that he couldn't even make his way on the street, because he did that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but that we would never be disconnected at heart, right? And you're
Yes.
not, and I
I'm
know
not at
you're not.
all, and my
I
son
know
will
you're
call
not.
me and no, no,
Yeah,
and we still, he'll, when he's in one of his hospital stays, he'll call me and it's just like nothing, and then he disappears again, and it's just this, it's happens to be my life right now.
yeah,
Just yeah.
but it's not because of anything that you failed to do with your love. You know what I mean?
No,
And
no.
that stigma is something that I think creates the kind of sickness for us because we get heart sick because we can't just like we
Can't
can.
just fix it. We
I'm
don't
not going to
just
say we can't because what I'm trying to say here right now is we can love our kids no matter where they are or what they're
Mhm.
doing or you know what I mean? And we can talk about them no matter where they are, no matter what they're doing and and because they're worth our love and humanity, their humanity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
just
yeah, so talking about like stigma and shame and those kinds of things, and maybe generations before couldn't talk about these things, and maybe early on this journey it was harder to talk. I mean, right now I'm here's this podcast that will live online forever, and even saying that my son is in this situation, and he's so many times you'll hear people, there's also the shame around that, and it's like,
yeah.
oh, where's their family? How could their family let them be like that? You don't know the whole story. it,
Well,
it,
and
it
lots of
you
times they're
don't
like,
know
"Where
the
is
whole
their
story.
mother?" And I'm like, "Well, their mother's over here, wondering what I could possibly do
What
to
can I do? I
this
know.
situation that where the system has failed our family
Yeah.
over and over and over again. But yeah, look at me, point at me. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
here I am.
Um,
Yes, yes. So
we navigated the system, and the system fails. And there are and will be an entire generation that was impacted by the opioid epidemic and the way that the brain chemistry was impacted by those drugs that will suffer um, the outcome of that system failure, right? And what you and I are doing right now is trying to save the rest of the mothers that are younger
yes,
than us
yes,
from having to
that's
go
right.
through such a time as that, right? Such a time as that. And there's the the hope, the place where you can put your hope is the fact that there are lots of us doing it now.
You're
There are
not alone,
lots of
and
us
there are
talking about it.
resources. Yes, yeah,
And there's science behind all of it. So we're
yes,
like empowered by the science and we're empowered by our love and our innate, mother nature.
right, and the connection, like when I
Yeah.
found you. Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly healing and supportive, to connect with somebody who gets your journey. It's huge.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah,
part of the self-care, right? That's part of taking care of yourself is finding those people that you can be your authentic self with. And they get it. There's no shame, no blame, no guilt. And they're
right,
not sitting over here trying to fix each other, but we're just sitting here trying to pull it apart and love each other and
and yeah,
be together,
hang
right?
on. That's
Yeah.
right. So you did a year of, and I know it's been longer than a year, but a year of condensed, if I can call it that, recovery. in your
Mhm.
journey. Can you speak to that, or is that a little more private, or are you would you speak to any part of that?
Yeah, yeah. I kind of say I took a non-traditional path of recovery, right? I didn't attend any mutual aid groups. I didn't go to a treatment center, although when I took my son to the treatment center, I did want to ask if I could also be checked in because I felt like I could use 30 days of being fed and sleep and, you know, talking to other people about stuff.
Yeah.
But I I started out not with the intention of trying to influence change with my son, but because I could not feel the way I felt. I was willing to do anything to change the way I felt
Mhm.
in my body and in my life and in my mind. And I met this woman who is a guide, and I went on a private retreat at her house. She was a stranger. I didn't even know her. And I just was like, I could disappear. But that's how desperate
Stranger
I
danger.
was. So, yeah, so she arranged these different retreats, and I was exposed to a lot of healing modalities. And, you know, some probably were less impactful than, you know, it just depends. Like I tried all million things. And, but during that whole time, it was really unpacking the impact of addiction on my life as a
Mhm.
human being, as a child, as um, a daughter, a mother, you know, all the ways that addiction had kind of threaded through my life,
Mhm.
and pulling all of that apart and recognizing my way of being and my responses to things, where they were all coming from, right? So it was almost like a total reorientation to a way of being in response to substance use that wasn't born out of this child who had a mother that was overusing substances, who had a grandmother that was overusing alcohol, like all that, and then my own substance use as a teenager, and 10 years of drinking and using drugs. I called myself a party girl, right? So um, that year, I there were coaches, there was equine therapy, there was rituals, there was meeting with uh, nature, nature guides. Like I did nature experiences; those were really impactful. I saw a Mayan healer in
Mhm.
Mexico. I saw a healer in Bali. I um, had these what they call it, medicine walks, and it just peeling. Oh, so many different kinds of somatic healing, um,
Yeah.
like the stuff that Peter Levine does, and then acupuncture and sweat lodge, like you name it, I did it. Like I was
Yeah.
like, I am going to find the cure for this. Me.
I need to feel better.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. And to be the mom that I wanted to be, and to be the woman that I wanted to be, and to like feel the way I wanted to feel on the inside of my body, right?
Yeah.
And my heart, and my spirit. And so I did a lot of things, and it's a huge long story that is book length or something. But it had impact, right? It had positive impact on my life, on the life of my kids, on the life of the people that I'm connected with. It had impact in my way of being. I really peeled apart the truths, and the cultural conditioning and what was true for me. And
Mhm.
I'm still doing that work. We always are still doing that work, but it was an intensive year for sure.
Yeah.
An intensive year. Yeah.
Well, how exciting. Yeah, I've had that the last few years as well with, just some crazy healing and meditations and things like that. And it's
Yeah.
all helpful, and it's all part of a process, I think, that never ends. I think that when we think that it ends, we're missing out on the best part that's still yet to come, right?
Yeah, I don't think it ends. I think we just like there's another level
We're
to
just,
it. There's
yes,
another
we
level
just
to
keep
it,
moving.
right? It's like in a video game where you get to the next level,
Yeah,
right?
hopefully. And
Yeah,
sometimes you can get hit and fall back a little bit and then have to recoup, right?
yeah. Like I can tell you, I was never so blissed out my entire life than doing a Kundalini breath meditation.
Hmm.
Like that, I felt like I was tripping, and it was
Yeah,
my own breath.
yeah. That's a real fast breath, right?
It was all kinds of breaths, but it was for a healing meditation and like the visions of the people I loved, and oh, it was the coolest thing I've ever done. Um, yeah, so I like to experiment with things like that, and see how it impacts my body and my mind and my way of being. I'm open
Yeah.
to not following the rules of society, I guess. Sometimes, I think that it really started here though with being a mother of a child with substance use. You know, it started that like my rebellion against the system started right here.
Yeah, I would say for me as well. I mean, it was really fighting against everything the way it's supposed to be because my
Yeah,
life wasn't the way it was supposed to be. It was all different. And so, how do you manage that your life is different than the way it was supposed to be or the way that you thought it was?
yeah.
Right. And so,
Or
you
like
start
I was
exploring.
told or
Yeah,
handed down, or I don't
yeah,
know. I just now I'm like, who says?
exactly.
Who decided that? Like everything's made up.
Right. It's kind of interesting. That's a whole other topic, but it's kind of interesting how it happens. And we just do what society and what tradition tells us and who decided those rules for
Yeah,
us. Right.
yeah.
So in the newsletter, Recover the Mother,
Hmm.
your objective is to what?
Well, in the first sentence of the about, it says that mothers are the second most stigmatized people in the realm of addiction. So, you know, my
Wow.
biggest objective is to help reduce self stigma, you know, and then create an environment where we have voice and we use our voice and we connect with each other, and to help mothers recover from the trauma that substance use and the systemic response has created.
And if somebody wants to find out more about your newsletter or about you, how can they reach you?
uh, the the newsletter's on Substack, and it's substack.com/ recover the mother. Hope that's right. And or they can email me at Shelly@ShellyLYoung.com. Yeah, those are the ways to get in touch with me. And
Yes, and actually I have the Recover the Mother, so it's the recoverthemother.substack.com
okay,
if
thank
you
you.
want more information, and shellylyoung.carrd.co will bring you more information about Shelly, and we're going to post that information also on the podcast if you want to reach out. So if you're a recovering mother from anything, because it doesn't have to just be the substance use disorder, but just looking for community and finding ways to for self-acceptance and removing stigma and stuff like that, I encourage you. And you have some, it's only, I subscribe, I love your newsletter, it's only $5 a month, but even if you don't want to do the $5 a month, there's a lot of free content as well, which is actually very valuable as well. Okay, Shelly, I don't know if you remember the last time I asked you, because this is the I Love Me Lab. So if you're going to give a word of wisdom to those mothers out there in remembering how to love themselves more, bigger and better, what would that be?
Do something with your body. Like do something that you feel good in your body doing, whatever that means to you. Whatever that means to you. Like that has probably had the most impact on my own mental health and emotional health is when I am doing something that feels good in my body. for me, that's dance,
Mm.
tennis, sometimes yoga. So I like yoga. I love yoga. I teach yoga, but sometimes it's not like fun. but but when I'm using my body, like when I can feel my body and use my body, I think that that's been the gift of all of this self care and self love and exploration is like being in my body and feeling good in my body.
Oh, I love that. And also, I think when you're using your body, you're focusing on what you're doing, right? So you're not focusing on whatever is worrying you. You're
Mhm.
focusing on that back, what do they call backstroke or the,
Yeah,
whatever it is that you're doing, you're focusing on your next move and not on what was, making you have that monkey mind that doesn't stop
yeah,
talking.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anything to get out up here and either into my heart or into my body. Those are my number one go tos. Like this, the mind thing that can mess with you.
Wonderful. I have one more question for you because, I've been following you a little bit and looking at your material and I'm loving your newsletter. Do we see maybe possibly a book in your future? And I know you do the speaking circuit as well and you're a writer. And do we see something like that in your future, perhaps?
Yes, I actually have a completed manuscript of that year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm. So I am in the process of learning how to send out uh, compelling query letters to agents. So that's my task right for the month of August is to start actually doing that, sending those letters out to agents, and trying to get that book into the hands of lots of mothers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I am eager to read it. So please let me know when you're ready to launch it or even before.
Thank
I
you.
would love to read it.
Oh,
Yes.
thanks.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
thank you so much. And to all of you who listened today, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to having Shelly again in the future, especially maybe after you launch that book. That would be another good time.
Thank you. This is so fun. I appreciate it so
Oh,
much.
we appreciate you. Thank you so much. And everybody have a wonderful day. And we will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening to this conversation. If you enjoyed it and want more information on our guests and resources, please visit ilovemelab.com. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe and share with a friend. Hey, there's more great episodes to come. So until next time.